All right, part 4 of Monogram versus Tamiya, Ferrari Testarossa, Miami Vice Edition. All right, in this part, we will be looking at the fully assembled engines, the plus and minuses of both. This is the Tamiya, this is the Monogram. I haven't yet wired them up for the spark plugs, but as that's a custom deal, won't affect the builds of the engines. Now the Tamiya, excellent build. As I said before in the previous videos, it's got great engraving. The parts fit perfectly. Tight seams and seals on everything. The belts and pulleys, very well defined. Timing belt cover, nicely engraved. Goes together very nicely and very easily. For the heads, all the detail painting is done on the engine itself. Based on the research I've done, this is it's close to the actual engine as I'm going to get right now before I start adding some custom touches to it. One place where they are radically different is in their starters. The Tamiya has a much better starter, much more realistic looking starter, as a solenoid is separate from the main starter housing, which is the real starter would be. Whereas on the Monogram, the starter and solenoid unit are cast as one piece. In this aspect, the Tamiya is superior. Now, where the Monogram is actually superior is in the actual casting of the intake plenums, where the Monogram has much more detail than the Tamiya does, which I really found hard to believe that the Monogram was. Let's see if we can zoom in here. Focus. There we go. Here you can see all the fittings on the ends of the intake plenum. On the Monogram piece, whereas on the Tamiya, it is a much more simplified intake plenum. So there, I have to give it to Monogram. Their intake plenum is much nicer than the Tamiya, but I think the runners on the Tamiya are actually cast better than the runners on the Monogram. The Tamiya also fits better into the block. Now, we look at the fuel injector units. Again, the Tamiya units are better defined, crisper detailing. The Monogram units are not bad, but as you can see, their casting is nowhere near as crisp as what's on the Tamiya. But the Monogram is not bad. Now, another place where the Monogram is superior to the Tamiya is in the alternator design. If you can see the back of the alternator here, it's fully detailed. The casing, battery terminals, and you can't really see it now, but it even has a venting on the casing. Whereas the Tamiya, the alternator is just a solid piece. No detail whatsoever on the rear. Kind of disappointing. Didn't expect that from Tamiya, but I guess they skimped in a couple of places, but made it back. Made up for it in others. Here you can see the pulleys. Excellent pulley design. The belts, excellent design there. The monogram, the belts and the pulleys. Nowhere near as nice as on the Tamiya. But I do think that the monogram has a better oil filter and filter housing setup than the Tamiya. Also, much more detailed than the Tamiya, as that is all you get with Tamiya. So overall, they both have their good and bad points. There's a casting on the transmission for the Tamiya, and the transmission casting for the monogram. I happen to like the Tamiya better, but that'll come down to personal preference. And then we have oil pan casting, the Tamiya. Again, super crisp, really nicely made oil pan. Cooling fins, everything's there. The axle seals, everything's there. Really nice lower portion of the block. The monogram, on the other hand, the fins are nice, nowhere near as crisp as on the Tamiya, but nicely done. The side detailing on the block is a little more simplified than what's on the Tamiya, but not bad at all. So I would say that the monogram is good, well worth building, but for overall appearance, got to give it to the Tamiya. Whereas the monogram has a couple of good points where it actually tops the Tamiya, in my opinion. The Tamiya overall gives a better looking presentation. Once they're all painted and assembled. Here we go. They both look good, but the Tamiya is cleaner, more well defined than the monogram. All right, that's it till the next chapter in this ongoing saga of the comparison between monogram and Tamiya.